Hello, friends. Namaskar to all of you. Today, I will not talk about research methodology. Today, I am going to talk about Indian culture. Today's topic is ancient Indian wisdom and its relevance in modern Indian society. As you can see on your screens, ancient Indian wisdom and its relevance in modern Indian society. This is a very important topic. Many educational institutions had organized national and international seminars on this topic over the years. So, this topic attracted me and I decided to talk about ancient Indian wisdom with the people like you. As you know, since ancient times, India has been famous for its wisdom and its thought. First of all, I want to talk to you about India itself or Bharat itself. What is Bharat? What do you know by the term Bharat? In Vishnu Puran, there is a shloka about Bharat. Uttaram yat samudrasya himadreschaiva dakshinam varsham tad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. The country that lies north of the ocean and the south of the snowy mountains is called Bharat, for there dwelt the descendants of Bharat. Vishnu Puran further says, "Ganti devaah kil geetakani धन्यास्तु ते भारत भूमि भागे स्वर्गापवर्गास्पद हेतु भूते भवन्ति भूयः पुरुषाः सुरत्वात्." The men born in the land of Bharat, the gateway to heavens and salvation, are more blessed than the gods themselves. So sing the gods. So you can understand, even gods clamored to take birth in Bharat, in the land of Bharat. As I said, since ancient times, India has been famous for its wisdom and its thought. The ancient Persians, Greeks, Romans, and many other countries of the world were eager to learn from its sages and philosophers. When in 18th century, first translations of some Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita became available to the West, European philosophers rhapsodized about the profundity and beauty of these. Here, they encountered a fusion of philosophy and religion, a deep wisdom and a concern with the ultimate that had no parallel in either in contemporary Western philosophy or Western religion. Indian philosophy and religion is known all over the world. Indian philosophy is highly sophisticated and very technical and surpasses in both in volume and subtlety. This was the ancient India where wisdom made its home before it went into any other country. Study of the history of the whole world, and you will see that every high ideal you meet with anywhere had its origin in India. As Swami Vivekananda said, Hinduism is the mother of all religions. This is the ancient land where wisdom made its home before it went into any other country. Therefore, friends, ancient Indian wisdom has always been a center of attraction and charm for the whole world. Sanskrit, now I will talk about Sanskrit language. Sanskrit is the oldest, most systematic and grammatically perfect language in the world. Sanskrit scriptures are stored all types or wisdom, which are very useful for acquiring the knowledge of Indian tradition, history, and culture. According to computer scientists of modern days, Sanskrit is the most convenient language for computer software. The grammar of Panini is one of the most remarkable literary works that the world has ever seen, and no other country can produce any grammatical system at all comparable to it. According to famous historian A.L. Basham, Panini's grammar is one of the greatest intellectual achievements of any ancient civilization. Apart from religious texts and scriptures like Vedas, Puranas, Brahmans, Sutras, Upanishads, epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, Sanskrit language produced great Sanskrit scholars like Ved Vyas, Valmiki, Ashwaghosh, Kautilya, Kalidas, Amar Singh, Bhas, Banabhat, and numerous others. Amar Singh prepared the first Sanskrit thesaurus, you can say Sanskrit dictionary and thesaurus, which is known as Amar Kosh. With Kalidas, classical Sanskrit reaches its zenith as he lays down his pen after a brilliant display of his poetical and dramatic talents. Kalidas was one of the greatest cultural messenger and representative of Indian cultural tradition. After the establishment of British East India Company rule in India, the Britishers showed interest towards the study of Sanskrit literature. They were of the opinion that the study of Sanskrit deserves far more attention than it has yet received in this country. For in that ancient heritage, the languages, the religious and intellectual life and thought, in short, the whole civilization of Hindus have their roots. Britishers gave priority to the study of Sanskrit to fulfill their administrative needs. European scholars like Sir William Jones, Schopenhauer, Max Muller, etc., advised young Europeans to learn Sanskrit for understanding the Hindu mind and wisdom. Friends, historian H.G. Rawlinson has given a very interesting account of introduction of Sanskrit in Europe. He says, Sanskrit was introduced in Europe by a curious accident. One of the company's servants, Alexander Hamilton, was detained in Paris during Napoleonic Wars. There he spent his time in teaching his fellow prisoners Sanskrit, and among his pupils was the great German poet and philosopher Schlegel. Schlegel, on his return to Germany, published his work known as On the Language and Wisdom of Indians. It was a great discovery for Europeans as Sanskrit was a treasure of classical literature. The Upanishads came to Schopenhauer as a new gnosis or revelation. Through Schopenhauer and von Hartmann, Sanskrit philosophy profoundly affected German transcendentalism. William Jones observed that Sanskrit bore a certain resemblance to Greek and Latin, and most probably all the three languages had a common root. All the languages were Aryan languages, Indo-European languages. Max Muller, in one of his lectures, says, I should advise every young man who wishes to enjoy his life in India and to spend years there with profit to himself and others, to learn Sanskrit and to learn it well. He further says that questions will be raised about the use of Sanskrit at present day. Is not Sanskrit a dead language? Many people in modern times used to say that Sanskrit is a dead language, but Sanskrit is not a dead language. Sanskrit is a very vivid language and full of treasures. We are passing through a critical phase of human civilization. Due to challenges and pressures of modern life, most of have lost the mental peace and joy. Our dominant culture of consumerism only promotes the material goods, so we often forget about the things that are most important to us. Our politics, economics, industry, and science are rich with wonderful achievements, no doubt. But still, there is no harmony and beauty in life. Why? What is the cause? At this critical juncture, the wisdom and message of Vedas will be of very great help to us. Vedas are the unlimited source of wisdom, and the Vedic culture is a cult of truth, beauty, and sweetness. We can make life sublime by our constant search for truth, beauty, and goodness. Vedic Dharma is a universal religion. Vedic Dharma is a universal religion. It speaks of Sarva Dharma Samabhav. A Sanskrit term meaning that all religions or all truths are inherently in harmony with one another. The unity of true religious values reflects this original religion of truth. These days, some scholars are trying to create controversy as far as Sarva Dharma Samabhav is concerned. They say the slogan Sarva Dharma Samabhav or equal respect for all religions is not a part of Hindu tradition. It is a recent creation of Mahatma Gandhi. One may of course argue that it is the spirit of Hindu tradition. Friends, don't forget, Mahatma Gandhi had borrowed all his spiritual thoughts from the holy scriptures. He often called Bhagavad Gita as his spiritual dictionary. As different streams having different sources all mingle their waters in the sea, so different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to God. Friends, the unity of true religious values reflects this original religion of truth. Love, peace, charity, compassion, devotion, honesty, and other higher interpenetrate and support one another. The view of Sarva Dharma Samabhav has been turned into a political principle in modern India. It has come to dominate the thinking of the country and has been turned into the main tool to harmonize different, often conflicting religious communities. Father of the nation Mahatma Gandhi accepted that respect to all religions is the principle of Hinduism. He preached for Sarva Dharma Samabhav. His views on Hindu religion are worth quoting. According to Mahatma Gandhi, my Hinduism is not sectarian. It includes all that I know to be best in Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism. The Upanishads Now I will talk about Upanishads. Upanishads are called Vedanta, the culmination of that philosophical inquiry which began in the Vedas. The Upanishads tells us about ancient Indian knowledge, vision and wisdom in great detail. In times, our achievements in science are immense, but still we have no peace. In the midst of conflict and confusion, the world is eager for a message. The Upanishads are immortal source of inspiration and the treasure house of the lore of the great rishis of India. We must look towards the inspired and enlightened rishis or sages for wisdom. We must look towards the inspired and enlightened rishis for our guidance and light. From every sentence of the Upanishads, deep, original, and sublime thoughts arise, and the whole is pervaded by a high and holy and earnest spirit. The whole world, there is no study, in the whole world, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. They are destined sooner or later to become the faith of the people. The Upanishads are called Vedanta, the culmination of that philosophical inquiry which began in the Vedas. Vedanta, the essence of Indian wisdom and philosophy, teaches us the technique of self-development. Its most succinct expression is contained in the Bhagavad Gita. According to Aldous Huxley, Gita is one of the most clearest and comprehensive summaries of the perennial philosophy ever to have been made. Hence, its enduring value not only for the Indians but for all mankind. So, even the foreign scholars accept the importance of Gita. The Bhagavad Gita lays stress on the duties of the warrior and the claims of the nation. There is a place for politics and heroism, but wisdom and love are more than politics and war. In his commentaries on Gita, Mahatma Gandhi described as his mother, when I am in difficulty or in distress, I seek refuge in her bosom. The best and most remarkable exponent of Vedanta was Shankaracharya, who lived in the 8th century AD. His major works are his commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, the 10 principal Upanishads and Brahma Sutras. His teaching can be summarized in Brahma Sat, Jagat Mithya. Brahma is the real, the world is an illusion. The individual self is the same as the Supreme Self. Indian religion and philosophy culminated in Vedanta. The ancient Hindus, in every feature of national life, were in the first rank. In each and every department, ancient Hindus excelled. Is it science, arts, religion and philosophy, architecture, painting, industries, trade and commerce, education and politics. In all the fields, Indians excelled. India is the source from which not only the rest of Asia, but the whole world derived their knowledge and their religion. As far as ancient Indian education is concerned, according to the ancient Indian seers, there is a greater life beyond and behind this apparent life. There is a larger world enveloping this apparent world. Therefore, according to these seers, the purpose of education is to make man aware of this larger life and to teach him how to it. Ancient Indian education helped to conquer what are called the vikshepas of the mind, like inattention, distraction, confusion, perplexity, lassitude, and restlessness. Today, even the brightest mind suffers from these infirmities. The modern mind is restless, distracted, ill at ease, in conflict with itself. Friends, modern education offers no cure or remedy for this kind of mental sickness. Modern day education fails to inculcate value. Modern education fails to inculcate value, education, and discipline in their curriculum. In modern India, large numbers of youth are aspiring for lucrative jobs. As of now, teaching is the last career option for a person. For many career aspirants, and this is perhaps the main reason for lack of good teachers in India. Listen carefully, friends. What I am saying, I am very responsibly saying. Teaching is the last career option for a person, for many career aspirants, and this is perhaps the main reason for lack of good teachers in India. Ancient Indians excelled in the field of science. And they very carefully pursued the study of astronomy, astrology, mathematics, chemistry, medicine, anatomy, and physiology, and architecture, etc. 2000 years before Pythagoras, philosophers in northern India had understood that the gravitation held the solar system together, and therefore the sun, the most massive object, had to be the 2000 years before Pythagoras, philosophers in northern India had understood that the gravitation held the solar system together, and therefore the sun, the most massive object, had to be centered. The Sanskrit speaking Aryans subscribed to the idea of a spherical earth in an era when the Greeks believed in a flat one. The Indians of the 5th century AD calculated the age of the earth as 4.3 billion years. Scientists in the 19th century were convinced it was 100 billion years. Most important astronomers and mathematicians of ancient India were Aryabhatta first, Latadev, Varahmir, Brahmagupta, Lalla, Manjula, Aryabhatta II, and Bhaskar II, etc. In mathematics, the ancient Indians made some epoch-making discoveries, notably that of zero sign, of the decimal place value system, of the use of minus sign, and use of algebra of letters of alphabet to denote unknown quantities. Once again, I repeat it. In mathematics, the ancient Indians made some epoch-making discoveries, notably that of zero sign, of the decimal place value system, of the use of minus sign, and use in algebra of letters of alphabet to denote unknown quantities. Hindu mathematics is undoubtedly the finest intellectual achievement on ancient Indian history, and this native power has fortunately survived to modern times. The people of India were capable to make iron pillar of Delhi and the Sultanganj copper colossus of Buddha, and 40 to 50 feet long, wonderfully polished and carved into a perfect roundness monolithic pillars of the great Mauryan king Ashoka. The earliest works of Indian medicine which have been preserved are those of Charak and Shushruta by the 4th century BC. Charak and Shushruta were Ayurvedacharyas. The Samhita of Charak and Shushruta had already become standard works of Ayurveda. Hindu physicians described ligaments, lymphatics, nerve, plexus, fascia, adipose and vascular tissues, mucus and synovial membranes, and many more muscles than any modern book is able to show. Indians had 120 surgical instruments during the time of Buddha. Once again I repeat it, Indians had 120 surgical instruments during the time of Buddha. Birth control is the latest technological fashion was suggested by the Hindu medical school of 500 BC. So, you can understand the wisdom of Indian scholars. Friends, Plato talked about the philosopher king. Plato, as you know, he was a Greek philosopher. He talked about the philosopher king who has love for truth, wisdom, reason, and knowledge about the good. Ancient Indian wisdom has emphasized time and again that the ruler should be known as Rajarshi, Raja and Rishi. Raja means king, Rishi means they must be men of high moral character and discipline and discharge their duty within the bonds of dharma. The ideal in India was Dharmarajya, a universal empire based on righteousness, where everyone lived in peace and harmony, free from basic wants, and was highest aspiration of mankind. This was possible only when the king and his ministers had high moral standards and had conquered personal desires for pleasure and power. Many ancient scriptures like Mahabharata, Kautilya Arthashastra, Sukraniti Sar, and many other texts, while they condense the contents of classical Indian political wisdom, they also contain a latent profound philosophy of an individual's life, liberty and material well-being. Essentially, the whole idea was inspired by spirituality, is the core of classical Indian political theory. It was India's ancient wisdom that inspired Renaissance and the freedom movement. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Dayanand Saraswati, Swami Vivekanand, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and many countless other leaders and reformers drew their inspiration from our ancient wisdom and tradition. Mahatma Gandhi said that India has to reach her destiny through peace and non-violence. To attain unity of mind, harmony, and integrity of personality, one has to follow the principle of truth and non-violence. Friends, Indians fought a long battle to free themselves from the clutches of colonial rule of Britishers. It was India's ancient wisdom that inspired the Indian Renaissance and the freedom movement. In contemporary world, many American and European universities like Harvard, Cambridge, and many German universities, many other European universities are in the grip of Sanskrit fever. Many universities have established very prestigious Sanskrit departments and are seriously engaged in learning of Sanskrit and ancient Indian wisdom. So, I tried my best to talk about this very important topic, ancient Indian wisdom and its relevance in modern Indian society. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and if so, please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you very much.